Tom,
Walt.
this is a little bit freaky because it's like people like listening into us on our Friday talk.
Eavesdropping, that's all right.
Eavesdropping. But we're happy to have people eavesdrop.
Absolutely.
And, we want to welcome everyone who is eavesdropping. Is there a plural to that? And so welcome. I'm Walt Hampton, and
I'm Tom Garcia.
You're Tom Garcia. And we've been gathering on Friday afternoons. We've known each other for a long time. And we've been gathering on Friday afternoons for a long time. Or Friday morning for you. It's Friday afternoon for me.
Yeah.
And we talk about shit. Can we say that on a live webinar? I guess we can, because we say that when we're talking. We talk about shit.
Yeah.
And I think about 3 or 4 months ago, we started talking about this idea of weariness in the world. And over the last few weeks, it's just come to the fore, I think, the sense that so many people are weary. I know I am. The email I sent out this morning was, I have found myself increasingly worn down. I use the term brittle, and I am a bit short-tempered. I don't have a lot of resiliency around this. And my daughter is in hospitality in a very well-appointed big resort. And she says, Daddy, it's out of control. People are so short-tempered and so angry. And anger, of course, is a secondary emotion. And the secondary emotion is often sadness or grief or fear.
Fear.
And so much of that is happening right now. And you and I have talked about how we can become more resourceful. And we thought maybe we would share some of that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think too, what I want to say, Walt, is there's an affection between us as men that is really unique and powerful and sweet. And I think it's useful to share that with others that can observe, they can witness us like that. I want to share a quick story. Our youngest daughter, we moved her to the big city, Phoenix, and after her first night in her apartment, she awoke to find her car missing. She immediately thought it was stolen. We came out later we found out later it had been towed. But I got to tell you, my first reaction was fear. And I cussed a blue streak. And later, a couple hours later, the tears came because I realized I cannot protect my children at a distance. I don't even know that I can protect them when they're here, when they're under my own roof. But I had such a feeling of fear and vulnerability, and I realized my anger masked my fear.
Yes.
And I think that's what we see in the world is anger masking fear. And under that, sadness, too, for something lost, something not realized, expectations not met, like that. And our conversation is about bringing us back to center, bringing us back to a place of grounding.
Yeah. And I think it's important as we do that for our voyeurs to realize that if they're feeling weary, if they're feeling fear, if they're feeling sadness or grief or loss, I feel so much unresolved grief about the last 24 months or last 20 months, that it's okay. One of the things we were talking about was that how achievement junkies and peak performers, they're not, those people, they're not very good at saying, I'm tired, I'm weary, I'm sad. And what we tend to do as peak performers, as high achievers, is we lean in and we work harder and we double down. Mm-hmm. As I think we'll share, that's probably not the most resourceful way to approach this.
Yeah. I'm one of those guys.
Really?
My guidance tells me, slow down, sit back, rest, lay down, get your weight off your spine and rest a while and then go again. I think it would be useful to, I think many of your people don't know who I am, Walt, and many of mine don't know who you are. So I'll start by just introducing myself, part of my background. I was a chiropractor for 30 years. I'm a dad. I have 4 kids, married to a beautiful woman, happily married for 25 years. And currently, I'm what I call a shamanic teacher and guide. And so how I became a shaman and what that means is another story for another time, but that's how I function in the world, how I work with people in a way of deep coaching, getting people to the depth of remembering who they are, what their deeper purpose here is on the planet, and helping them to connect to source in such a way that their work, their lives are sourced powerfully, for people that have influence and responsibility and great trust, in some ways thrust upon them, that they can meet these obligations with efficiency and aplomb and grace. Yeah. So that's a little bit about who I am.
I love that. I love that. I said at our webinar copy that in addition to be a shamanic teacher, you're a reluctant coach.
I admit.
And a good coach, but reluctant.
Yeah.
And I, in turn, use the copy reluctant monk, because my work in the world, after a very successful career as a lawyer, nearly 25 years as the managing partner of a firm, I became a coach. I worked with Tony Robbins. I was trained by Tony. I became one of his results coaches, and we went on. And Shabani and I, who was my business partner and beautiful wife of many years, she and I created Summit Success 15 years ago to help business professionals grow and scale businesses and write great books in the world. And yet what I have found is that connection to my ground, Tillich uses that term, ground of all being, informs a lot of the work I do. While it might be business building, what I know is that most business building challenges are personal and spiritual challenges in disguise. And so like you, it gravitates towards source work, and some of the work that you and I share around Course in Miracles and sacred scripture, and your connection to the ascended masters. And so the work for us comes together in an interesting way, and we both language it a bit differently for our people, but it comes to a common point.
Yeah, that's our point of connection also. And why we're here today, to bring those disparate perspectives together in one place, to share from a powerful place in ways that we could be of greatest value to all of you who are listening.
Yes.
So I just want to add something too, in that I made a comment the other day that a powerful way of being, not just, rattles and drums and fire, although I have all those elements. Without them, there's just my connection with source, which is true for everyone. Without all the accoutrements of life and lifestyle, there's just us and our relationship with God, the creator, by whatever name we give that power. And if we didn't get to anything else today, that's the one thing I would want to convey with as much clarity as I can muster, that the single most important thing we can do, and the most primary activity we can engage, is to strengthen and deepen that connection, no matter what else we do every day, to attend and nurture our connection with source through our prayer, through our meditation, through all of our activities of contemplation, and to not neglect it. What I see is we often in our culture step right over it and get on with other stuff. And we forget that it's so simple, so easy, and it's the most powerful thing that we can engage, nurturing that connection.
Yeah, I love that. And I love your use of source. For my languaging around that is ground, or Tillich's term, ground of all being. And yet, I also intersperse that sometimes with spirit, or Holy Spirit, through my original tradition, through my family of origin. And so connecting there is like connecting to my very fundamental power. Without that, without that connection, and when I lose that connection, I was sharing with you a metaphor. When I lose that connection, I become like a high voltage wire that has fallen to the ground, and I begin to vibrate like this, and the vibration then creates this self-fulfilling loop where it makes me anxious, it makes me less resourceful. And so coming back again and again to stillness, for me, that's my point of access to what we're talking about, to get still, to be still.
Yeah. It's simple, but not easy. What I hear you saying. And we don't have to look very far in our world, in our immediate world and in the greater world, of the level of disconnect, the level of disinformation, misinformation, conflict, our warring culture. We're subjected to this like an onslaught. And so our best strategy, our best resource, is to withdraw from that as often as possible, if not for long periods of time, to reestablish our own connection, and deepen that groundedness, as you said, as a place of resource for ourselves.
You use the term "we are subjected," and I would push back and say we often subject ourselves to it.
Yeah,
because, this technology that was supposed to free us has, enraptures us. It almost becomes this fixation where we're always in it. We're in the controversy. We're in the news cycles. We're in the debates on social media, and it's in we put our own snouts in it all of the time. And it's it's almost like watching a fiery car crash. It just draws our gaze.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Stepping out of that, stepping back from that, going to quiet. I shared with you last week, for one of the great losses I had during the pandemic was that for years I would at least 3 or 4 times a year go to a Benedictine monastery in Weston, Vermont, the beautiful Western Priory, where I would just, for a week, just get quiet. And it was beautiful. I remember the first time I got there, because there was no cell phone coverage, and I started standing on the bedpost to see if I could get the signal. I wanted to try to get, and there wasn't anything.
Yeah.
But I shared with you last week, I spent a week getting quiet. But for the first day, I was like this rattling wire, this sparking wire. And it was only by staying in that discomfort, that dis-ease, that finally it began to settle. Yeah. And the energy got still.
Yes. Last year, I spent a week in the winter at a Buddhist monastery, Buddhist temple, not far from where we live here, in a wood cabin with a wood burning stove, all by myself, off the grid. And it was one of the most sublime and peaceful times of my life. And when the time came for me to come home, I almost didn't want to come home. I was so at peace in that space. And as you alluded to earlier, we're information junkies, I say. I'm just as, I want to, guilty is maybe not the right word, but you know what I mean, just as guilty of that as anybody. And the vigilance that it takes, a certain discipline to disconnect for periods of time so that we're not bombarded by signals. So one of the things I like to do is I just get out in nature, get out in the woods, away from cell signals, microwave, electric grids. Like just in our homes, the electric grid alone can be very disruptive to our own electronic nature, and feel the rhythm of the earth, that vibration of the earth. We feel it in ways we don't even we're consciously aware of. It's just to be in that space and to feel ourselves reconnect to what I say is real and true.
I love that. Without going down a rabbit hole, you in your role as healer did something very kind and generous for me. You drove a long way to take care of my back that I injured this year, and it was a horrible injury. And your intervention set me on a path to healing, which was so beautiful. And when I came home, finally, I went to see a naturopath. I'm not a big fan of medicine. I don't subject myself easily. But he suggested that I get away from the GPS watch and from the cell phone that I'm carrying and that energy. I mean, you were just speaking, stepping away from that energy, that environmental energy accelerated my healing.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big believer in all that hocus pocus, I'm just calling that out.
A lot of it works whether you believe in it or not. Well,
so you said.
And I got to be honest, the only reason I went out to see you guys is I really wanted to have lunch with Ann, and you were there. So then I adjusted you.
Truth be told.
And I knew you'd been injured, and I'm like, Walt, get adjusted, clear your spine, and then do the other things that you did, which is really, really underscores something, that our ability, our capacity to heal is within us. We often, in our culture, we run to the doctor, the chiropractor, the naturopath, whomever. In fact, it's deeply, deeply ingrained in our culture. Before you do anything, ask your doctor, right? Which leaves us effectively disconnected from the awareness of our own capacity to be self-healing, which we have tremendous capacity for, is to self-heal. And, part of my work is to not leave people thinking that I'm the healer, or that I did something to them, for them, on them, but that they did it themselves, to empower them with that awareness, to redirect that back to you, that you healed yourself, and leaves you in a place of strength and clarity of your own capacity, and when you need help, when you need support, you can ask for it, which is sometimes difficult in our world, in our culture also.
I love that, because it juxtaposes with something that I work with and teach my coaches who I'm teaching and training. And that's that the word empower is so, it's empowering, because it connotes that I have the power and you don't have the power. I'm going to empower you. And what's true is we all have our own power. And our job as coaches, the way I approach coaching, is that we're the guides, that we are encouraging and guiding people that we're privileged to work with to step into the power, to embrace the power, to connect with the power that they already have.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I had such a challenge with the word coach. And it's, my story around that's not even important. It's just that I had to come to grips with what that meant for me, and to not be that before I could embrace it and say, yeah, that's what I do. In addition to, in an expanded sense of guiding. But then I went further to say, call it deep coaching, which is to say it goes beyond the managing the circumstances of one's life, which I'm not limiting to you or anyone else to that, by the way, but going to a deep place, where there's a power and a source and a connection that I think everyone is hungry for and doesn't always know how to get to. And that's part of my job, is to help them get to that. And that's in our conversation, just in the conversation, to help people become aware I have that capacity, that I can go to that place for myself, that it is available to me, that I do have access. I have a direct link, a direct connection, and it's available.
And it's freely available for all of it. There's, I'm blanking on the primary scriptural passage, but it's nearer than near. It's as near to you as your own breath. It is, that power is nearer than near.
Yeah.
And it's not that spirit of the divine is somewhere else, that we have to go on some long lion hunt to get it. If we can come to ground, if we can get still enough, and that is the challenge, to get still enough, we have the capacity to connect there and to heal, and from that place to be healing sources for other people.
That's the flip of it. It's right where we are. The Course in Miracles says, where else could the presence of God be except right where you are? And I love that, because it just reminds me it's not out there. Even though I point heavenward, skyward, when I'm making reference to the Almighty, I also know it's right here within me. Years ago, I went to a sacred site south of here in New Mexico, Chaco Canyon, beautiful ruins of a culture that lived there, hundreds of years ago. And it was windy and cold. And I came back. It happened to be on the spring equinox. And when I got back, my guidance, the voice that I hear, said to me, you didn't have to go all that way to find sacred ground, because it's right where you are. And I understood sacred ground, if you will. I mean, that's not a word that I sling around lightly. Sacred ground is right where we are. It's where we stand because of who we are, and because of those who've gone before us have blessed it with their innocence and their peace for us, just as we're going to do for others who follow us. And as you just alluded to, as we become more grounded, more resourceful, and deeply connected, then we have the capacity to share that light with others, to shine that light into the minds of other people, the people we love that are closest to us, and then our circles of influence and our people.
Yes.
Yes.
And you had referenced Course in Miracles. There's my favorite passage in Course in Miracles, as I've shared with you, is make room for him, whatever that source, they use the masculine pronoun there, but make room, and you will find yourself so filled with power that nothing shall prevail against your peace. And I actually misquoted that right now, as I often do. It's leave room for him. It's not make room.
Yeah.
Make is what us high achievers do. We make shit happen.
Yeah.
But it's simply opening ourselves to that.
Yeah. And to tag onto that, it says, let nothing disturb your peace. Yesterday in my journaling, it came to me as I was getting ready to do a fire ceremony for a group. And there's a lesson that says, I am in need of nothing but the truth. And then tagging on that, in my own memory of other places in the Course, it said, the truth needs no defense. And in my defenselessness, my safety lies, which can be counterintuitive, but to be what I say, especially in these times and in our culture, and I say, for me, lay down the sword, set aside your shield, and open, like come undefended before your Creator. Come undefended before your brothers and sisters.
And that is so challenging. It's really challenging for people who kick ass and take names, who build businesses, who lead teams. It's really, really challenging. And Vicky, who I recognize from our community, said from the Course in Miracles, you could see peace instead of this all of the time. It's true if we drop all of that defensiveness, and how hard that is.
Yeah, that's the challenge. That's the challenge, to be accepting of what is, to not be in constant judgment. The moment I say this shouldn't be this way, this shouldn't be happening to me, I'm full on in judgment, not accepting of what's happening, and I lose the perspective of what the gift could be in whatever's happening, whether it's a challenge or something of beauty and blessing, or you know what I'm saying. It's just to drop the judgment and be present to the moment.
So I am always challenged by what you just said, because I'm a big believer in that whatever the circumstances, I can make shit happen.
Yeah.
Just that's part of my DNA. That's part of my belief structure. And so I have to navigate for myself that premise that you set out. I don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me. And so, that I think that serenity prayer is a great place to navigate. There are certain things that wisdom will tell us we cannot change. And there are certain things that we can. And the ultimate wisdom is to come to peace with which is which.
Yeah, I get it. And it's a paradox. And it's the paradox of living, being physical, in physical form, human form, and being part of spirit, part of the divine, being inhabited by that energy of life. And the challenge is to be mindful and aware and relaxed and be ready for action, like guided action, or guide action that's not just go out and, like you say, make shit happen, but it's like there's shit to make happen, and I'm guided in the effort.
There's a passage, you'll know it in the Course. Decide with him, and you shall be led down a path like on a summer's day. I mean, it's a beautiful passage about, if you allow that wisdom to guide you, there is a flow and an ease to the stuff that we make happen. Yeah.
The Course is full of information, like universal principles like that are consistent, and seemingly paradoxical. It says a healed mind does not plan, but elsewhere it says plan well in this world. You have to plan. So, it's really walking in both worlds, and remembering, as my guidance tells me, remember which reality you're in.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm sitting quietly in a meditative state, I'm in a different reality than I'm in when I'm in action. Say I'm crafting a message to my people, or, physically doing something in the world, making a fire, digging a hole.
So you spend, as I do, I just want to speak to this as we maybe transition into some really practical stuff for our people. But you spend a lot of time in quiet reflection, connecting with Source.
I do. I'm blessed to be able to do that. And I did it even when I had a full-time practice. I still, maybe this relates to a lot of people. There were days often before I go into the office, I'd feel this kind of vague anxiety, sort of this rising tide of fear. I didn't really know what it was or where it was coming from. And I'd have to stop myself and just 10 or 15 minutes. There were many times I pulled off on the side of the road before I'd get to my office alongside a river in the warmer months, and just journal for a few minutes just to center myself. And then once I got in the office, truly I was in sacred space, and my attention was all the way, fully on the people that were in front of me. And I gave as well to the first as I did to the last, like that. But I think also, and this, I want to just speak to this, is many of us may be feeling fear and anxiety that's not even our own. It comes from our mother and our father, something in our lineage, or maybe even ancestral. I won't even go to past lives. I mean, that's like outside the realm. But just to say, we wake up into a state and we're not even altogether sure where it originated. Mm-hmm. And what do we do about that? Like for me, it's let go, get clear and connected, so that I can begin again in a good way going forward with whatever's in front of me to do. It doesn't take long. I don't spend all day in quiet. I'd like to, but I don't.
Yeah, and we were riffing a little bit before we went live today about that great Gandhi quote, and it's roughly interpreted. He's reputed to have said, "I meditate an hour a day unless I'm really, really, really busy or a lot's going on, and then I meditate for 2." And I shared with you that before you and I got together for our usual riff today, I went for the second time today just to some quiet meditation, because that's the way that I can ground and get clear, and then, like you, show up in that place of service and give it all. But I can't do it unless I tap into something else. I've got to tap into that source.
Right. To be present. Same thing for me. I got up early this morning, fully aware we were going to have our call today. And I didn't launch into, what am I going to say? What are we going to talk about? I sat down and I have my quiet time, reading, prayer time, journaling. And then like by a gossamer thread from my chair where I sit with my coffee to the computer where I start to craft whatever's there, allowing whatever's there to come through me, not focused primarily or directly on our conversation, but knowing full well it would be guided, that you and I would be guided in conversation to talk about what people most need to hear and what would best serve ourselves and the folks that are listening.
So you allude to a practice that you do in the morning.
I did allude.
Yes, you alluded to that. So, and we share. It's a little different, but we share a common practice. Mm-hmm. I would love to each of us to share that. I always kind of kept mine on the DL until I heard our colleague Susan Garrett speak from the stage to this. Who, she makes multi-million dollars a year, and she had two secrets. Secret number one was do shit, which resonated for me. I liked that. Secret number two was that she claimed the first 5 hours of the day for herself. It's like, what?
I love that. I remember when she said that. I love that.
I know. And that challenged me to double down on something I've been doing a long time. But I'd love for you to share because morning routines are really popular in self.
Yeah, and they're powerful. I mean, I couldn't. It's like, don't leave home without it.
Yes.
And, when I heard Susan say that, I actually just did my own little quick math and went, I spend probably the first 5 hours of my day devoted to, it's not just silence. I get my coffee, I get to my chair. That's first. And then I just reach over, pull the course into my lap and read. I read the daily lesson. I read something before and after. I could spend 15 or even 30 minutes or more if I had the time, simply reading and meditating on what I'm reading. And then I sit quietly, and I'm not a good sitter. Like I can't sit for 30 minutes or an hour in a meditative state, but it's all meditative. Just like walking can be meditative, or any number of other activities can be meditative. And it's primarily for me to feel my sense of connection, to feel a sense of well-being and groundedness, and to bask in it, just to rest in it. And often then my best journaling happens. And I'm not saying I did this yesterday and I'm doing this today. It's my journal speaks to me. It's like allowing wisdom to come through my journal. And it comes in I don't remember if it's the second person or the third person, but it's saying, you rest, you relax your mind, you find the words, find the language for your prayers, and to express who you are and what you want to share with people, like that. And then I begin my day, and there's taking care, taking the time to take really good care of myself, the vessel, so that I can be of service. Because I am clear, I am a servant, and my ceremony, my fire at that place, that's my domain, and I'm a gatekeeper for something sacred that's available there. That's not often available in ordinary places in time and space. So that's a little bit of my routine, and anybody can adapt that to their own life, their own activity. It's harder when you have small kids, but you find the time. It's that important.
So there are a couple things I just love about what you shared. One is because I talk about this all the time in my Power Principles of Time Mastery around self-care in general. And often the pushback is that's selfish. And the way that you've framed this is so beautiful, because it's just, if you're not taking care of the vessel, it's just not possible to be the servant, to do the work. It's not possible.
It's true.
And the other thing I loved about the way you talked about the journaling and the Gossamer string, I was thinking about that beautiful Rumi quote that I think about often in the morning, because I get up at 4:15 and I don't want to. And it's, the breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you.
Oh my. Mm-hmm.
Don't go back to sleep. The breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful quote. Don't go back to sleep. And it's such a great metaphor. You know, don't go back. Once you've been awakened, to whatever extent you're awakened, it's painful.
Yeah.
And maybe even hurtful to go back to sleep, to be unconscious again. That's not why we're here.
So like you, my morning routine is probably 5 hours long. I get up at 4:15. I start in the very same place you do with coffee. I really like that place. And I journal and I meditate and I do some reflective reading. And then I do a long run along our coast, and then maybe some more journaling, more reflective reading. And I'm not into social media or the smartphone or anything until I've done that work.
Yeah.
And I just want to speak because we have people who have, I did this talk the other night for a group of young networking people. I did a talk around time management and productivity. And I said, don't try to do this if you got little kids. I said, what? I discovered this practice accidentally when I was a young single father. I raised 3 boys on my own for 12 years. And I would get up 15 minutes before the kids did. And then I was rocketed into the day.
Yeah.
And it was only by haphazard experimentation that I began to realize that if I could, what would 15 minutes extra be like? What would a half an hour? And then before long, you know, the kids would get up or I'd get the kids up at 6:30 or so, but I was then getting up at 4:30 and I had 2 hours, and they were the most precious 2 hours of the day. And then I could move into the day as a single dad so much more resourcefully.
Yeah.
It's possible, even if you have little kids, to begin to experiment opening up that time.
Yeah. Well, we teach our children, they observe us more than they listen to us. If anybody, you know, for all of us who've had kids, we're modeling all the time. And so they learn how to take care of themselves by watching us take care of ourselves. Yeah. And I know that's true for my children as I see how they move through the world, you know. But I want to also underscore something here for all the folks that are listening in, is that, you know, we've just described our personal routines. And I want to just turn that around to say, as you're listening to that, listen for your own. That you have one. If you have one, that you have one. And also how you can fortify your time and be more vigilant, more vigorous in taking that time for yourself. As well, as you said, it's not selfish. It's absolutely essential. And without it, we just can't be of the kind of service we want to be, or enjoy life even to the extent that we want to enjoy life without that.
Yeah, I love that. So I shared with you before the call that I might have mentioned earlier that I spent a lot of last week resting. And one of the very first messages, guidances that came to me, because I was beginning to think about this call today. And it's like the most stupid statement, but it's so antithetical to what most of us do. It's like, when you're tired, rest.
Yeah.
Hello?
What? Wait, what?
when you're tired. When you're tired, rest. Yeah, it's like
I love it.
Yeah, but it's so
Counterintuitive.
but I guess why I'm sharing it is that as busy professionals, as high achievers, peak performers, entrepreneurs, business professionals, it's okay, especially now in this time of profound weariness, to say, okay, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I need to rest. I get to rest. I have to rest. It's the only way I can go and continue to serve.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this before the call too, about one of the things I said I do more often these days, especially when I have a big commitment coming up, either working with somebody or working with a group, is I'll just lay down. I lay flat. I set my timer, 15 minutes, get the weight off my spine, and just will myself gently to relax.
Mm-hmm.
I often just conk out. I have these like sweet little lucid dreams, and then the timer goes off. I get back up and go again. And it's refreshing. And it's also me telling me I'm taking care of you. And this is how I do it. You know,
I love that. And there's a different way to look at it as productivity, because I always like to reframe these things as productive. But I want to, because but my people are here. I got to speak to my people. We get shit done. But we know, I mean, everybody on this call knows that your best stuff comes in the shower, sitting on the deck, taking the long walk. Our best stuff comes from that space.
True.
And yet, very few of us give ourselves that opportunity. The Carmelite mystic William McNamara, who wrote a beautiful contemplative book called The Human Adventures, says, one of our highest calls, he said, I stake my life on the belief that we would be better served if we cut in half the amount of activity we did and paid attention instead to long, loving, leisurely looks at the real.
Oh, beautiful.
And this is like heretical for the author of The Power Principles of Time Mastery to say, but I dare say that we should spend more effort wasting time.
Yeah. Consciously
wasting time.
Yeah.
Vicky says, I think too many of us get hung up in creating a sacred space. I love that, because something you said earlier, Tom, and I almost jumped in, and then our conversation went, so you went to the retreat because it's a place to go. And I loved going to the Benedictine monastery. It was sacred space. You went to sacred space, like you're going to like the IHOP. You're going to go to the IHOP. You're going to go to the sacred space. Yeah. But I shared with you my grief last year about not being able to return to Bariloche, Argentina this past winter, because that was such a portal for me. It was one of, in the spiritual world, we talk sometimes about those thin spots, between here and there. And that was that was a portal for me. The breezes at dawn spoke to me every single day. Yeah. And then I came back home and I'm back into the mundane. And I couldn't go back. And then one day, and this is for Vicky, I'm running along and I heard my guidance say, the portal is here. The portal is here. It's like, dum-dum, the portal is here. And it's true. That space that's where we're Meister Eckhart, the wonderful 14th century mystic, said we are like drops in the ocean of the divine. We are always drops in the ocean of the divine.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple of things that came to mind. One is, one way to honor yourself and honor your own wisdom is have a notebook or a little handy, it's not in my vicinity at the moment, one of those little moleskin books. Tony Robbins said,
like this, Tom?
Yeah, but more like this size, so you can put it in your pocket. I have several notebooks, but Tony Robbins said, a life worth living is worth recording. It always struck me. I heard that years and years ago. So to honor yourself by having a notebook somewhere in your vicinity so that when inspiration strikes, you write it down and honor your own inspiration, your own wisdom coming through you and to you. And also to riff a little bit more on this notion of sacred space, and I'll speak to it like this. When this whole pandemic was kicking off and we didn't know what was going on, I took it to the fire and I said, what the hell is going on here? And what I heard was...
Can you say that in sacred space? What the hell is going on? Is that okay?
Well, I cuss all the time. I'm sure it doesn't offend, I use strong language when I want to express myself,
Right.
vigorously. And what I heard was, there are forces at work that you don't understand, that are beyond your ability to comprehend in this world. And the safest place for you to be is in ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understood that to mean not that, spend all day at your fire with rattle and drum, oming. It was to say that ceremony is a mindset. It's a way of thinking and being in the world where everything is sacred. Everything has energy. Everything is holy in that respect. And to move through the world gently, to move through the world mindfully like that, and especially with each other, to connect with your brothers and sisters in the world in a simple and easy way. We don't have to make it complicated, but to remember our connection like that. That's how I interpreted that, to stay close to your ceremony, what that meant. So, yeah.
I love that. And I just, what came to mind as you were sharing it with that is that quote from the Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama was asked about his religion. He said, my religion is kindness.
Yeah.
And, right now we just need, that's, to slow down enough to not react when someone is cussing you out or angry, that so much of that is triggered by fear. And, from that mindful place, realize that this is not about you. This is about something underneath the fear, or something underneath the anger, fear or grief or loss, connecting with that and responding as resourcefully as we can. And it's hard because we're fearful, but with kindness.
Our fear gets triggered when someone else is afraid.
Yes.
My fear gets triggered when someone else in front of me is afraid and they're expressing themselves with anger or outrage, like that. I think it's useful to switch gears for a moment. And I sprinkled throughout our whole conversation has been practices and thoughts and ideas around how to stay centered and balanced during these times that we're in. My wife and I were talking earlier. It's like, boy, any time we're in has been challenging, and this time is no different. And we're here for a reason. We're here for a purpose. You could say we chose this time to come forward and to find the way to be resourceful, to find our way to connect with what's real and true, and with what's most important, in our own sovereignty in the matter. So I say all that to say some of the things that I'd recommend, if I haven't already said them, is, to be out in nature as often as possible, to get your feet on the ground, to get sunshine on your face, and to breathe fresh air wherever you can find it. In the city, in the country, in the mountains, at the ocean. Spend as much time as you can outside, and bringing with yourself the reverence and the awareness of it's all sacred. And I walk the earth with gratitude, with respect, with appreciation for all that I am, all that I have, and all that I've been given. And simple thing, but it's such a powerful mindset to move through the world with.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, like you, I'm outside as much as I can, and being on the earth and being mindful of my connection with the earth, that is just not tearing across the earth, but actually feeling that deep connection with the earth.
Yeah.
And I think that's so valuable. And even just, from a pure vitamin D perspective, getting out, and, it nourishes us to be outside,
Yeah.
so even taking away any other dimension other than wellness. Yes, Nadine, Mother Earth and other creatures are able to heal. Even when we experience loss, it is all sacred. I love that.
And then to remember to be gentle with yourself.
Yes.
So, I mean, we're harder on ourselves than anybody could be. I'm harder on myself than anybody could be on me. And so the reminder that I have for myself to be gentle with myself, to be forgiving.
Yes.
My ways, my thoughts, my judgments, and then as quickly as possible to release them. We have opportunities all the time around us to simply let our judgment go, just to surrender ourselves in that way. And that's a powerful way of being, is simply in surrender, not passive, not, oh, well, without intention, but intentionally surrender to higher power.
Yes.
Greater power within you.
So a couple other practices, Tom, you and I have alluded to the fact of our notebooks and our journals. For nearly 30 years, I have done Julia Cameron's, who wrote The Artist's Way, her morning pages, which is a 3-page stream of consciousness journaling practice. And secondary to my meditation practice that I'll talk about in a minute, it is one of the most important practices I do every single day. She said it was like flushing the toilet of the mind, which is wonderful. It's just I grab the cup of coffee, I put my full spectrum daylight lamp on, I sit underneath it, and I journal out those 3 pages, and patterns begin to emerge. Insights begin to unfold. Wisdom percolates through, fears bubble up. And it's just a wonderful way to connect, because, what I say to the smart people I coach is that smart people think they can figure it all out up here. And we get it all jumbled up. And simply the practical process of getting this shit out of our head helps to begin to move the energy in such a beautiful way.
Yeah. I want to emphasize what you're talking about with the journaling, is that I've been an inveterate journaler since I was probably 15 years old. And the people that I work with, it seems they all journal to one degree or another, almost everybody I know. And to just reinforce that practice is a really healthy way to stay connected to your own sense of being. Your own wisdom, whatever wants to come through you. And like you said, you start to see patterns, and things start to download themselves into your awareness as you move that energy, keep moving that energy, which is another, I think, really key practice. Keep moving the energy physically, mentally, emotionally. Tears are good. Crying, grieving, really good. Just let it out, let it flow, and don't hold on.
Yes.
Don't hold on to anything,
Another practice that you and I share in different ways, I think, is some type of reflective meditative practice. I have been a Vipassana meditator, 30 years of just simple breath meditation, the single most important practice of my life, bar none. I would not have gotten through single parenthood. I would not have gotten through this last 18 months without that meditation practice. Yeah. When I'm teaching it to professionals, I always couch it in the evidence, particularly to lawyers. Dear colleagues, the evidence will show that even 5 minutes a day for 6 weeks will reduce your stress hormones, will increase your productivity, your acuity, and your sense of wellness and well-being. Yeah. And you don't need an app. You don't need to go to sacred space. I did a program for wealth managers one year, and everybody wanted to know, what should I wear? You can wear anything and do it anywhere, at any time. Yeah. And you have your own way of approaching that.
Yeah. I have to admit, Walt, I have long held that breathing is a good activity to engage all the
Just
time.
give me just a second. I'm going to write that down. Get that down.
Everybody else, write that down.
Write that down. Take a note here. Yeah. So,
and breath work's powerful. To breathe deeply, to breathe consciously, to breathe in life, breathe out stress, like that. Whatever your practice is around that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then one other that I usually share, I want to honor the time of our voyeurs, and I'm watching us getting closer to the top of the hour. But there's another stupidly simple practice that is so restorative, and it's sleep. Giving yourself permission to sleep, for God's sakes. Just stop it. As a young lawyer, as a young single dad, I was convinced I could muscle through on 5 hours of sleep. And we get stupid, and we get unresourceful, and we get more brittle, and we get more fearful, and we get less productive and resourceful if we just continue to drive forward. And so giving yourself permission, we tell ourselves, well, we'll get to that. I'll get to sleep. But, having a hard stop to the end of your day, so you're not on the grid, that you're stepping away from that, and really, really embracing the practice of sleep.
I just looked at Caddy's question. How do you balance out wanting to get up earlier in the morning for my morning ritual and the desire need for self-care and sleep? So that is a point of balance. I struggled with that early, especially when I was still working in my practice, with getting up early and going to bed earlier. And like you just said, Walt, having a hard stop at the end of the day. In the book Deep Work, he talks about, I forget the author right off the top of my head, but he talks
Cal Newport.
Yeah, yep. Right. He talks about having an end to his day, and I think it was like 6 o'clock. I stop working, I move away from the computer and all of that, and I attend to family life. Mm-hmm. One thing I wanted to add also, while we're on the topic of practices, is one way to stimulate your creativity and also to just wash away or rinse away the day at any time of day is to shower. Mm. So I saw that in a book about creativity, and since then have taken an extra shower a day just to stop, change, start something new. Take a quick shower, towel, 2 minutes, a Navy shower, in and out, refreshed. So it's one little tidbit.
And another little tidbit from a time mastery perspective is I teach the scheduling of white space between the things on your calendar so that you could actually get up and go outside. You could take a quick shower, but you could just listen to some music, drink some water, and just intentionally create some space, open up that space. The opening of space, that goes back to make room for, that divine source, or leave room for that divine source so that you are filled with that peace.
Yeah. Now, do we have time for one more?
Do one more. Do one more, dude. Yes.
Hug.
Yeah.
Hug more. Yeah. I threaten people. I say, you get within 3 feet of me, I'm gonna hug you.
Yes.
And people know that about me.
Yes.
And it's incredibly restorative. It's incredibly, and not just like a quick.
No, I say be prepared for an inappropriately long hug.
I just tell them, wait. They start to break. I'm like, wait, just hold on. Not that long. What, a 10-second hug is like, that's a long time, but not really.
Yeah.
So more hugs.
Yes.
More gentleness, more kindness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are at the top of the hour, and so we have to give virtual hugs to each other. We often, we do that, and we often end by saying, and I say it today, as I so love you, Tom. Your presence in my life is such a gift, and that's part of I think we're able to care and support for each other. And that's part of what has seen us through this time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Walt. I hear you, and I feel the same way about you. I look forward to our time together, and especially when we can be in person and have Ann and my wife Karen there.
Yes.
4 of us. It's just a beautiful thing.
Well, and when we meet on our next Friday, we won't have all of these hundreds of people with us, but we hope that
we'll do it again.
We'll do it again, and we hope that it has been in service to those who have joined us with us today. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your great insights in the chat. We are going to get to the other side of this. There is an end to this crazy period of time and new beginnings. And what we want is for you to have the tools to get there resourcefully and peacefully and with a great deal of grace and peace. So peace to you all.
Thank you, Walt. Beautiful words. Adios, my friends.
Bye for now.
Bye.